Good morning, ladies. It's Dr. Carol Laurie, and I'm here with Dr. Melanie, and we had some wonderful tech problems which drive us all crazy, but we're here now. So, Melanie is an expert in epigenetics, and she's going to talk to you about what that is because it's a very important component of your health and well being. So, welcome and thank you for spending some time with all of us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
So tell us, what is epigenetics? Because a lot of people have never even heard of it, more or less don't know how important it is.
Sure. Well, the CDC actually has a definition in a full page, so I recommend people check that out
Right.
just to give a reference point. But it's the study of how our behaviors and our environment can make changes in the way that our genes work. So this isn't the hard and fast genetic condition that's irreversible. These are the things that are reversible. So if we want to take into account having healthy body weight, staying away from secondhand smoke or smoking ourselves, those are some fairly well-known ones. But there can be additional things like, say, for example, turmeric might be all the rave, right? And there's research on this, and it states that it does this, this, and this. However, for certain enzymatic pathways in certain individuals, it may not be the best thing for you. And I can speak from experience. So when it comes to my epigenetic tendencies, these are things that I got from each parent. And so you have a propensity. It's not a given. It's not to say this is the outcome. It's to say this is what could happen if you have dirtier genes, meaning if you lived in an environment that was full of chemicals, if you were a smoker, if you were significantly over, there are these burdens that can then change, right? So it's like if you were making a recipe and you either had to substitute or you put in too much sugar, right? It's gonna affect the outcome.
So what was it about your pathways? What are the pathways that are not good for you specifically? And how do people find out if they have these unhealthy pathways that need special attention?
Sure. Well, that's a bit of a more complicated and advanced one that I happened to bring up about turmeric, but it just is a
Okay.
pretty popular. Yeah, but I can bring up another one. We'll talk about digestive enzymes.
Sure,
So
great.
that's a really common. Should I be taking digestive enzymes? And as a gut health expert, number one, I'll ask people, well, is their stool floating or sinking? Depending on their toilet and system, they may or may not know. But if the stool is floating, then I'll say yes, please continue the digestive enzymes until the stool sinks to the bottom of the bowl, and then we will stop the digestive enzymes.
What does it mean if your stool is floating versus sinking? I think we need to basics because most people don't even look at their stool, more or less know one that should be doing one versus the other.
Sure. So if you do look at your stool, which is that's what I encourage people to
Yes,
start doing,
absolutely.
I always say, when did we stop looking at our diapers? Because we look at them when we're young and then we look at them when we're older. What happens in between? So we do need to know, and that's how we, what's going on with the person, right? And animals too. So if your stool is floating, that's generally an indicator that you're malabsorbing fat. So it can either be a floating stool, or it can also have maybe a sheen around the stool or in the bowl. It looks like almost like an oil slick. That's obvious fat malabsorption. And, high fat diets are very, promoted in some cases. And so that can be a factor in terms of not only why is my stool floating, why am I malabsorbing this fat? And again, oftentimes the information can come out in somebody's epigenetics versus just handing them another supplement and trial and error and, quote, the practice of medicine. Why not get more information about your blueprint for me to work from? So, for example, I happen to be, and I just use this lovingly about myself, a mutant in the sense that I received an alteration in a gene from each parent. And because I received it from each parent, that means I'm compound heterozygous, got them from each parent. And that means that I have a propensity, again, I'm going to stress that word because it's not a given, to have decreased enzymatic function. Now I'm saying this broad term, but I'm bringing it back to digestive enzymes, okay? So if I have I can have up to a 50% decreased enzymatic activity. Now, what would it, push it down to 50%? Well, it could be that I have a gut dysbiosis or SIBO, which I happen to treat. I could have hormone imbalance. I could have excess stress. All of these things could make it more around or less that 50% enzymatic function. That then may lead to my stool floating, which then leads to me saying, okay, I need help with my enzymatic function. Let me just replace that for a time period because body needs help. Then as stool begins to sink, that's showing me that my body enzymatic function is improving. All of the efforts I'm making to reduce my stress, et cetera, right, is now lifting my function up to not require those digestive enzymes. Now, I happen to be kind of in the middle there with that 50% tendency could happen, but there are some people who could have a 75% increased enzymatic decrease in activity, and some who have a 25%, right? So again, that's one of the identifiers, and this is a fairly well-known acronym, MTHFR.
Right.
People pretty much can remember that one. And oftentimes doctors will maybe even run this test and, oh, well, they don't necessarily know the correlation. Some people very much do know the correlation. People in rheumatology, there's certain areas that this is being more infertility, for example, and response to cancer medications. So that's one of the things that I at least like to say, hey, that's a good piece of information, but it's really only a teeny tiny pinpoint dot in a Monet painting, right? So there are additional enzymes that work together. In fact, MTHFR does not stand alone. It has other enzymes that are supported in it. So those who may have had the MTHFR test done and know their enzymatic status or this propensity that they may have, there may still be some additional information to put the whole piece together.
And what would that be?
For example, not just isolating MTHFR, it's that
you have to go further down the pathway. You want to
correct. There are others for so MTHFR is connected to PEM. I mean, I can rattle off a lot of acronyms. Okay. To PEMT, it's related to COMT, and those three in particular are like the top three. So don't just isolate, say, for example, many people will just focus on increasing methylfolate. But again, there's other pieces because to get to PEMT, that's how we actually make or find out if we can make adequate bile. Again, I'm simplifying things significantly. Yeah. And so, for example, bile is composed of phosphatidylcholine. Again, I have a mutation at PEMT, which says that I might require more phosphatidylcholine. And if my body needs phosphatidylcholine, right, it needs help to make that bile. And then bile is antimicrobial and it's going to recycle hormones. So instead of me just chasing let me treat my SIBO over and over and over again, I found out, oh, I need to address my bile production. And when I improve my bile production by giving my body more phosphatidylcholine, which it has a tendency to need, now my body is going to make more adequate bile because it has that product that it needs to make it. And I found that that worked for myself and many other people.
Right. See, this is the beauty of working with an expert such as Dr. Melanie. I mean, it's like you don't want to just throw things at yourself. You have the beauty of functional medicine, which is you test specifically and it provides you with information, and then you can appropriately individualize your supplement protocol to address your specific SNPs. And we do that with epigenetics, as Dr. Melanie does. She specializes in gut health, correct?
Yes.
And other hormones and...
Yeah, I call it the hormone microbe shuffle, right? If you're treating your gut, you're going to shuffle the microbes and vice versa.
Right. Mm-hmm. And anyone who's listening to us and is in part of my community with someone with breast cancer, who's had breast cancer, or if you're in active treatment, the foundation of everything is there is a hormonal and inflammatory imbalance. And the more information we can get about that for you, the more we can individualize your protocol, correct?
Correct. And I've found some people, especially they hear estrogen, right? And they'll be wait a minute, I've got to be very careful with that. And I'll say, yeah, that's exactly the point here, right? We need to just look and see how your body might process the estrogens, and how we can support certain pathways clearly in line with your treatment plan.
So if someone's on tamoxifen or aromatase inhibitors or Lupron hormone suppression, as they often are put on after they've been through what I call active treatment, how do you feel knowing about their epigenetics or information from the Dutch hormonal panel would impact what we do with them?
Well, that's a big one to unpack. I mean, where are we in that process would definitely be dependent, on that. It would be dependent on, again, I'm always looking at more information than just MTHFR,
Right, of
right?
course.
So I guess how could we I hear the question, but it's quite broad.
Okay, sure. So I get asked this all the time.
Yeah.
Should I do a Dutch hormonal panel? Or should I do specific epigenetics testing because I've had breast cancer, I've completed treatment and now I'm on hormone suppression. And I think for me, it depends, first of all, the age of a woman. I mean, if it's a young woman who's in her 30s who's had this, I would want to know what's happening with her epigenetics as far as her pathways and her hormone ability to break down. But if it's an older woman in her 60s, where does epigenetic testing come in for her at this point?
Right. Well, I think that's the reason why I said it was pretty broad, right? It's like, where is their timeline of life? What's going on in their world? What do they want to know? Not everybody wants to know.
Yeah. Well,
And it's a very interesting. I mean, because if people many companies have gone through this, and it happened to deal with a time with 23andMe. I think it was really about secured information, right? So many companies started to come out with, and my mentor and colleague did as well, with, let's do a whole new test and have it be, secured. And quite frankly, I'm seeing that test has since been discontinued, and they're going back to the 23andMe raw data for their report.
This is a great conversation, because let's talk about security and testing and what companies that you recommend, because I get asked this a lot and it's not my area of expertise. So I appreciate your input.
Right. So I'm mentioning it now because I follow this person, and that's exactly what they were all about. And it happened to be at a time, right as a cusp of this security issue. Now it's my understanding, and of course there's lots of disclaimers and lots of buttons you need to click, right, with 23andMe. But it is, when I see this company switching back to 23andMe, it shows me that they've improved their security. And many companies that were, and some they'll offer, have you not done 23andMe? Here's the swab or the kit, right, for $200. Or have you done 23andMe? And you can upload your raw data, and it's maybe around, half the price or less, right? So there was this time period, I would say, even within the last 5 years, where everyone was building their own kits and tests because of secure, and then it's like, but when somebody else has already gotten taken off and has the backing that 23andMe does, of course they were going to address that. The point that I wanted to make is that what I always preface with people with 23andMe, and this, I did it so many years ago, so I don't know if this is still an option, but you could click, I would rather not see the genetic information, right? So you could, and the way I would describe it is, you could check a box if you don't want to know, some maybe worst case scenario, maybe they have a family history of something and they don't necessarily want to have that information, right? But they could gain access to the raw data, which is what we really wanted. And then the raw data could be used across many other epigenetic tests that we could gain more information.
Right. So I think it's very important. Now, what you're saying is that, and I know I get these reports and they have these capital letters, and, for me, I need to spend quite a bit of time researching what that means. And I have the skills and the way to do that. But for a normal person, when you do the 23andMe or any test, I think you need to consult with someone such as Dr. Melanie, because it's sort of like, what makes us think that we could like get this and then go on the internet and read a little bit about it and then understand? I mean, there are nuances that we need guidance with from this enormous amount of information.
No, I agree. I mean, I looked at one report on one particular thing in particular. Actually, one of them was I spent the first 6 months looking at one thing, and then I spent the next 6 months just looking at estrogen. Like, where does estrogen affect every single pathway, right?
Mm-hmm.
And so what you're saying is very valid, because you can't just take, and that was the other thing that I noticed with this company, is that they were promoting a self-taught, do it yourself, etc. And yeah, it's very overwhelming information. And I've been studying this particular report for years, and I like to tell people it just swims in my mind. And so I have a private programmer, but I have somebody who can say, everyone knows how valuable sleep is. And they were able to give me just a quick little update on what's going on in their life, what happened. We described, the sleep disruption to a T, and then I was able to look, listen, and like I say, I'll even close my eyes and I can visualize their report and their pathways. And I'll say, try this. Of course, it's their body and their right. And I'll be like, tell me what you think of that, right? Because I'm like coach and athlete, and I'm like, but this is what I'm hearing and seeing in your pathways. And that's why I can refer to myself as an intuitive too, because I'm taking these things into account, and the person and their emotional state and their need to sleep state, etc. And within 8 hours, I mean, the next day I was just kind of like thinking we might hear in a few days or something, but it was like next day he's like, slept through the night. Thank you. And even I was like, wow, because I actually intuit, I kind of was like, I think you actually need to go back to that probiotic. And I'm actually more known for stop the probiotic. And so even they were surprised. They're like, really, doctor? And I was like, yep, let's just get that back in there, because it was in there before. And lo and behold, within a short amount of time, that's exactly what they needed. Now they could have spent who knows how long trying to, put that together and piece that together. So yeah, that is the value. And like you also said, it's a lot of time that I've spent on this, right?
Years. Yeah,
exactly. So
if somebody, for me, when women come into the program or my clinical practice, one of the things that I'm always amazed at is the lack of what we would call functional testing or targeted testing that women have. And especially with breast cancer, if there's a recurrence, the next thing in my mind is the oncologist should order either a Caris molecular intelligence report or a neogenomics or some kind of germline SNP testing. And that enables me to know where I need to target the supplements, and also gives the doctor and the woman, notice I don't use the word patient, the woman, information about how her cells respond to certain chemotherapy treatments and if she's eligible for any clinical trials. So I would imagine that for epigenetics, and the thing I want to say to the audience is epigenetics, it gives you the ability to change what the report says. Epigenetics is not, cement around your genes and your life. It provides you with information. Then you work with someone such as Dr. Melanie, and you are able to change potential problems before they occur, or even after they've occurred. You can come back and regain your health. So what companies do you recommend people use, and why would somebody, when in their health recovery journey, do people reach out to you?
Good question. Okay, so what companies do I recommend? Like I would even say that I'm ebbing back to 23andMe in terms of I mean, honestly, okay, so Dr. Ben Lynch is my mentor in terms of epigenetics and his strategy and report. And so I started working with that in 2016. And then within the last
Strategene report?
Strategene, yes. Yeah. Mm-hmm. And so that's what I was saying. He went with going with a new kit, and now he's gone back, or it's been discontinued, and it's going back to if you have the 23andMe raw data. So that that is really helpful for people, I think, because if I have that base information,
Go ahead.
people can go further from there. So for example, I'll just bring up something that I did recently. I was going to the dentist, and I know that I have a bruxism. I grind my teeth, and I was looking into this company called EndoDNA in order to find a CBD product that might help me. I wanted to be open to CBD to calm me for my dental appointment. I don't know. I get anxious going to the dentist, and turned out I was able to, I had my raw data from 23andMe from years ago, which saved me, right? And I was able to spend less on this report. This report was very robust. In fact, I'm super impressed, because not only did I find a formula that works for me, you can look at these categories and you can say, okay, what about sleep? What about energy? What about overall? What about my immune system? And I found the CBD only. Now, mind you, it does go into THC. Like you can click a box to say THC only or CBD only, or a combo for those who are in states where they might have a medical card or it's available recreationally.
It's fine. Yeah.
Right. So I am in California for those who speak. I speak freely to this, and some people are in other states and they go, "Oh my, she's talking about that." And I'm like, "Yep, it's fairly standard here," which is why I like people to know about this, because I like to say, are you curious or are you cautious? And it's understandable to be both, right? I was both. And I get these samples for CBD all the time. People want me to, sell their product. And I've tried some of them and I don't even notice the difference. They actually don't taste that great. Or I just shrug my shoulders and go, why would I do this? When historically I've seen amazing results with people with high-end professional quality CBD. So here I am going, all right, well, let me just use this report. Thankfully I had my 23andMe. It was $50 to get this report, this robust information that then not only showed me here's why, here's the terpenes, here's the combo. It was so specific. I was very impressed. And then it also said, would you like to purchase a product that has this, ratio, et cetera? And I was like, you're kidding me. And then I was able to see, oh, look, these match for multiple things, including my bruxism. So I buy the product. Yeah. And I was just like, let's see, right? Still a bit skeptical. And only within the first dose did I notice, but it was that I dosed for a week prior to my appointment. And I was like, wow, I'm really just seeing, I even added it or had it with my morning coffee because I like my coffee, right? But when coffee can almost make you anxious, this just took that away. It was like, I'm getting the antioxidants only, and I have this nice calm feeling. So anyway, that was one of the examples that really struck me in terms of yes, you could purchase the kit for, you could do a cheek swab only with that company. But I appreciated that. Oh, look, I already have my 23andMe raw data, if that's making sense, right? Even if you don't look at the extra information that they provide you, having that raw data can get you the strategene report, could get you the CBD report. It can get other reports that I'm constantly monitoring. There are many, many companies out there. I happen to know on the investor side of things, who owns who and who has them, right? Who's kind of the top of the chain of these companies. And so there's that to take into consideration too. But it also depends on what information people are looking for, right? And there are some companies where you do just have to submit a sample. That's how you're going to obtain the information. I'm trying to think of some other 3x4 genetics is one that I've used, and True Diagnostics is another. These are all epigenetic testing companies.
Great. Well, that's a lot that you've provided us with. But the thing I want to say to everyone watching this, either now or later, is that really you need to be working with someone such as Dr. Melanie. Getting this report back with these capital letters, maybe a little bit of an explanation, is not going to provide you with really how to move forward with this information, which is really the purpose of it in the first place, right?
Yeah, I mean, I think I really love it when people get involved, right? And and we can go over things, um, but that they know that they've hired me, right? It's like I can read a legal document, but boy, it's sure great to have an attorney, right? To say, here's what it says, and here you're good, right? Or whoever the expert in any field is, right? It just gives you that peace of mind, and it's like that's what I'm paying you for, to
Right.
just handle it.
I know, because women with breast cancer come into my programs and in my clinical practice, and they've done an enormous amount of research on Dr. Google, and they'll come in with 50 vitamins that they've purchased for their protocol. Half of them right away from the beginning we have to throw out because they're not made to pharmaceutical quality standards, and the other half we can finish and move on, but the protocol is a mess. I mean, they don't know what they're really addressing. They read someplace, oh, I should take this for that, and so we need to
Yeah.
organize and systemize and make it so that it's not running your life, it's part of your life. And I think that's the beauty of what someone such as yourself really does. It's because it's not just about supplements, right? It's also about how to eat and exercise and everything else.
Absolutely. If not I mean, I'm not a therapist, but we're looking at the mind, we're looking at energy, we're looking at um, much more, the whole person, truly the whole person. Mhm.
Do you want to talk a little bit about your work with energy? Because I know that it is pretty amazing. So I know that we
Well,
would love to hear about it.
yeah. I think, well, historically, I've always been very, very interested in that. I call it the woo spectrum, right? We have the woo, woo, and kind of way over on one end. I think we all know that, which I love, but I'm very scientific and evidence based too. So I kind of have this spectrum, I like to call it. And yet my mom says that when I was very young, if not 2 years old, she recalls me like talking to spirits type of a thing. And thankfully I have a mother who wasn't, didn't
Alarmed.
suppress any of that. Yeah. And yet I did myself as a child. I mean, I had a lot of, I was, and they'll now refer to it as sensitive or empathetic, right? That was me. My mom always said, oh, just, let it roll off your back, etc. And then even in college, I would have more things. A specific, very, very actually scary incident happened. It was like I had a premonition about an accident, and it involved my father. And there was a phone call. It was just one of those, it could be a movie type of thing. Again, suppressed it until I'm later in life, fully in practice, focusing on SIBO, have people coming from right all over the world even. And personally, I met the love of my life much later in life, but it was absolute, like my mom would
Me
say,
too. Doesn't
did your
matter. It
knees,
happens when it happens.
right? And she's like, did your knees buckle in? And I was like, yes, mom, my knees buckled in, and then he died just like that.
Oh, I'm so sorry.
And yeah, and I was the last person to speak to him, just a lot of heaviness. And I mean, you never know how grief is going to affect you,
Oh,
especially
grief
when it's
is
sudden
intense.
like that. It is. And yeah, I mean, I can go back to, in fact, it was a year ago today.
Oh, Melanie, I'm sending you lots of love and
Excuse
hugs.
me. It was this time of year, pardon me. It was 5 years ago. Let me scratch it. But
But
it was this
still,
time of year. And I'm just realizing that right now. So thank you. Because I've come so far in my grief, because it devastated everything and devastated my business. I mean, I was just struck. And so one of my patients who had my cell phone for emergency reasons only, I was having a really hard day and I was going to sit down to meditate. I even put it in air quotes because I was like, yeah, right. I roll, set the alarm for 5 minutes, and all these thoughts came rushing into my head. I was like, this is pointless. The research on this is wrong. I mean, I was being that type of person. And by the end of that, the alarm goes off and this patient messages me and she says, you don't know this about me, Dr. Keller, but I'm actually a medium.
wow.
And I was like, oh, okay, I'm open to that. And she then sent me text messages that were so clearly from him. I'm talking
Oh,
details that I was literally looking at. And she would describe what I was looking at, something I
mhm.
had done earlier in the day. And she said, it's a good thing you went this way. It was just like, oh, whoa, and it just struck me. And I knew that I could do this. And I knew that I had seen cases, and if not from the past, That actually did come up in one case, and I did share that with them. I was pretty scared to do it. But at this point, I then got struck with how important that was in my health, how important it was for me to hear that in that moment, and how much that helped me literally get off the floor, you know?
Yeah.
And then moving forward, it was like, he kind of was just like, I'm going to show you more of what you can do. And I think you should come out with, not, I mean, I'm not saying he's telling me this, but I just felt it overall as I was talking to a patient who was giving a testimonial. And they're like, oh, great. Well, I'm done with SIBO. Now, when am I going to see you again? And I said, well, you know what? Things can happen. Life can happen. It's not like SIBO's checked off and, you know, it's done. I'm like, for example, I had a sudden, you know, and he was like, whoa. And he's like, and I was struck by this woman telling me that something from the other side had, you know, a message for me. And then they said, do you have a message for me? Of course, I always get permission, but I did. I was like, oh, that's why I'm telling this story, to then, you know, kind of pay it forward. And they were so struck by the accuracy of what I had to say that, and it was pertinent to not only to their current situation and maintaining their health where it was, but in order to not relapse. And I'm not relaying this to cancer. I'm just saying in general, right? This was a SIBO specific case. But from there, they just started coming to me for that. They're like, well, can I, you know, see you for this? And I was being so quiet about it. I was like, oh no, I don't even have a, you know, I don't even have that as an option. But they really brought that out of me and sent me all kinds of people. It was like this underground, you know, like we don't really talk about it. And yet he had me on a call with his business manager, his attorney one time. And I was like, no, like you know, I'm a doctor. And the attorney says, I actually asked him to call you because of your accuracy. Can you please help us with this business situation? So that's just where, and it just brings me a lot of joy, again, to those, right, who are open to it. I am not that person who goes into somebody's frequency. Like, you have to, I can maybe hear the music, but you have to give me permission to hear the lyrics. Does that make sense? Like, somebody has to say, yes, please. And so from there, it really has, because I also was able to get to the bottom of some major cases. I mean, some of those who I've worked with have gone to Cedars-Sinai for 10 plus years.
Wow.
And we were able to resolve the situation. I've had people who've traveled the world to see different doctors. And again, it's not me per se. I'm not saying this from an ego place. It's actually coming from this, like, this energetic place of, if there is someone like me that can just speak about it, right? Because I think oftentimes that's the missing piece in medicine. Right? I just went to my dentist, you know, you go one time and you get one energy, right? And then you go the second time, you're like, oh, is she having an off day, you know, or whatever. And it's not to take anything personally, but we can sense, we can know when something is different, right? So I think if we aren't taking that into consideration, we're missing a huge piece of the overall picture.
Absolutely. How do people get in touch with you?
Well, they can reach me at intuitiveedgedoctor.com. That's my website. I also have SIBOsolution.com. But how I'm working now is I like to meet with people, see if it's a right fit for a one-on-one program. The one-on-one program includes a lot of these tests that we've mentioned, not all, but some. Again, it's dependent on the accessibility and other bonuses and things that we can do together.
It's interesting. Facebook wouldn't let me post SIBO.com. That's okay. Well.
Oh, SIBO Solution, singular.
SIBO Solutions.
Just singular, solution.com.
Yeah. There we go. Facebook. Wonderful. And Intuitive Edge Doctor.
Correct.
Intuitive Edge Doctor. DOCTOR or DR?
It's spelled out, doctor.
Okay, good. Now it let me do both of them. Dr. Melanie, thank you for your beauty and for your vulnerability and honesty and for your sharing and being here with us today. And it's really been an honor to meet you and hang out with you. And thank you.
Thank
So
you. Really appreciate it.
So, ladies, it's Carol Laurie, and I'll see you, for those of you in my Empowered Against Recurrence program, I will see you in about a half hour. And for the rest of you, this is going to be put on my YouTube channel. So our Dr. Melanie's genius and expertise and really wonderful work will be shared worldwide, hopefully. And
Okay.
thank you all very much. And Melanie, just hang out here for just a second when we'll just talk for 2 seconds. Okay.
Okay.
Thank you all, everyone. And this is Carol Laurie signing off for now, and there'll be more later. Have a lovely day.